Welcome back, drama lovers, to another episode that's about to serve you the kind of tea that's so hot, it'll burn your tongue and leave you gasping for more. Buckle up because today we're diving headfirst into what might just be the most savage, jaw-dropping, and downright brutal public rejection of the year. We're talking about Maurice, yes, that Maurice, who just delivered a reality check so devastating that it probably registered on the Richter scale of heartbreak. And at the center of this emotional earthquake, none other than Pearl Watts, who went from acting like a queen to being dethroned faster than you can say, travel partner. But before we unpack this delicious disaster, let me ask you something that'll make you lean forward in your seat. Have you ever watched someone live so confidently in a delusion that you almost felt bad for reality when it finally showed up to the party? Well, honey, grab your popcorn because we're about to witness exactly that, a masterclass in public humiliation served with a side of second-hand embarrassment that'll make you want to hide under your blanket. The bomb dropped like a meteor from space when Maurice, in what can only be described as the most ice-cold denier in recent memory, publicly stated that Pearl Watts was nothing more than his travel partner. Not his girlfriend, not his lover, not even his special friend, just a travel partner. The audacity. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of this man to reduce what Pearl Watts had been painting as the romance of the century to the equivalent of a business arrangement. It's like watching someone take a Mona Lisa and casually mention it's just something they use as a coaster. The man didn't just break her heart, he took it out back, ran it over with a truck, reversed, and ran it over again just to be sure. Now, let's talk about Pearl Watts for a hot minute because, oh boy, this woman had been living her best fantasy life. She wasn't just acting like Maurice's girlfriend, she was out here conducting herself like she was already planning their wedding, picking out baby names, and measuring the mansion for curtains. This woman had upgraded herself from supporting actress to leading lady in her own mind, complete with all the confidence of someone who had already signed the marriage certificate. She was posing, and positioning herself as Maurice's ride or die, his future bride, his everything, basically acting like she had already won a competition that, plot twist, she wasn't even officially entered in. The shock that rippled through their fanbase when Maurice's denial hit was nothing short of seismic. Fans who had been shipping them harder than Amazon Prime were left staring at their screens like someone had just told them that Santa Claus was actually their Uncle Bob in a red suit. The cognitive dissonance was real, people. These were the same fans who had been writing fanfiction about their love story, creating ship names, and probably planning fan meetups to celebrate their relationship. And then Maurice came through with the verbal equivalent of a wrecking ball, demolishing every carefully constructed fantasy with just a few choice words. What makes this situation even more deliciously dramatic is the sheer public nature of this rejection. This wasn't a private conversation that got leaked or some behind-the-scenes drama that slowly emerged. No, this was Maurice standing up in broad daylight, in front of God and everybody, and essentially saying, "Ma'am, I don't know her like that." It's the kind of public disavowal that leaves you wondering if you should laugh, cry, or just sit in stunned silence while you process what you just witnessed. The man really said, travel partner, like she was his GPS or something equally replaceable and functional. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is where we need to put on our detective hats and dig into the psychology of this whole mess. When a man truly loves and values a woman, when he sees her as his queen, his future, his everything, he doesn't just claim her, he proclaims her. He shouts it from rooftops, posts it on every social media platform, and makes sure everyone within a 5-mile radius knows that this woman is his and is proud of it. It's basic relationship mathematics, love plus commitment equals public acknowledgement. Maurice did the exact opposite, and that should tell us everything we need to know about where Pearl Watts actually stood in his life. Let's break down the 3 categories of women in any man's life because this is where the story gets really educational and, frankly, a little uncomfortable for some of us. First, there's the woman he proudly claims, the one he introduces to his mother, the one whose hand he holds in public, the one he can't wait to show off because she makes him feel like he won the lottery. Then there's the woman he keeps secret, maybe the timing isn't right, maybe there are complications, but there's genuine care and protection involved in the secrecy. And finally, there's the third category, the one that Pearl Watts found herself brutally shoved into, the woman he outright refuses to claim, the one he distances himself from publicly, the one he treats like a liability rather than an asset. The most heartbreaking part of this entire situation is watching Pearl Watts' transformation from confident queen to publicly rejected woman play out in real time. This is a woman who had been carrying herself with the confidence of someone who knew her place in Maurice's life, someone who had been acting like she was already wearing his ring and planning their future together. She wasn't just hopeful, she was certain. She wasn't just interested, she was invested. And that level of confidence, that public display of certainty, makes Maurice's denial not just a rejection but a complete character assassination of her judgment and intuition. Pearl Watts fans are currently going through what can only be described as the 5 stages of grief at breakneck speed. The denial phase hit fast. He didn't mean it like that, he's just protecting their privacy, he's probably being pressured by his management. Then came the anger, and oh boy, did it come with a vengeance. These fans are out here pointing fingers at everyone except the obvious culprit, creating conspiracy theories that would make QAnon jealous, and basically doing everything except accepting the simple, painful truth that Maurice just isn't that into Pearl Watts. The blame game that's currently unfolding is absolutely fascinating to watch because it shows how desperately people want to protect their fantasies even when reality is slapping them across the face with a wet fish. Some fans are blaming Sonia Uche's supporters, creating this elaborate narrative where outside forces influenced Maurice's decision. It's like watching people blame the weather for a plane crash when the pilot clearly stated he never intended to fly in the first place. The mental gymnastics required to maintain these theories would qualify for Olympic competition. But let's talk about Maurice's role in this disaster because, honey, this man is not as innocent as he might want us to believe. Did he simply avoid drama by keeping things vague? Was he just enjoying Pearl Watts' company and attention without any intention of commitment? Or, and this is where it gets really messy, did he selfishly use her for publicity, content, and social media engagement while having no intention of ever making things official? The man allowed Pearl Watts to live in her delusion, let her present herself as his future bride, and never once corrected the narrative until he was probably forced to address it publicly. The timeline of events makes Maurice's behavior even more questionable because this wasn't a situation that developed overnight. Pearl Watts had been conducting this one-woman show for months, acting like Maurice's leading lady while he sat back and watched the performance. He had plenty of opportunities to set the record straight privately, to have a conversation, to manage expectations, but instead, he let her continue this public display until he couldn't anymore, and then he delivered the correction in the most public and humiliating way possible. What we are witnessing here is what happens when assumptions meet reality in the most brutal way possible. Pearl Watts assumed that Maurice's silence meant consent, that his presence meant commitment, that his participation in their public interactions meant something deeper than it actually did. Meanwhile, Maurice was probably thinking he was just being friendly, just enjoying the company, just going with the flow, completely oblivious to or deliberately ignoring the narrative that Pearl Watts was constructing around their interactions. The public nature of this rejection elevates it from a simple relationship misunderstanding to a full-blown social media disaster. This isn't just about two people having different interpretations of their relationship status, this is about one person's very public dreams being crushed in the most visible way possible. Pearl Watts didn't just get rejected, she got rejected in front of thousands, maybe millions, of people who had been watching her live out what she thought was her love story. The second-hand embarrassment is so intense that even strangers are feeling bad for her. The lesson embedded in this dramatic disaster is as old as time but apparently needs to be taught again and again. If a man truly values you, if he sees you as his future, if he considers you his woman, he will never, ever deny you publicly. He won't reduce you to a travel partner or any other diminutive label that makes you sound like an employee rather than his beloved. He won't leave you hanging out there, conducting yourself like his queen while he sits back and watches without claiming you. A man who loves you doesn't just tolerate your presence, he celebrates it, protects it, and makes it official in ways that leave no room for doubt or misinterpretation. For Pearl Watts, this public rejection represents more than just a failed romance, it's a complete recalibration of her reality. She went from living in what she thought was a love story to realizing she was actually just a supporting character in someone else's narrative. The woman who had been planning a future with Maurice now has to figure out how to rebuild her confidence, her public image, and probably her entire approach to relationships. It's like waking up from the most beautiful dream only to realize you were sleepwalking through a nightmare. The fans who had been invested in this relationship are now left dealing with their own form of betrayal because they had believed in the story that Pearl Watts was telling. They had been rooting for love, celebrating what they thought was a beautiful romance, and now they have to process the fact that they were essentially watching someone's one-sided delusion play out in real time. It's like finding out that your favorite movie was actually just someone's fever dream, and you were the only one who thought it was real. Maurice's brutal honesty, while potentially necessary, raises questions about timing, delivery, and basic human kindness. Yes, he had the right to clarify his relationship status, but the way he did it, reducing Pearl Watts to a travel partner, was so dismissive and cold that it almost felt calculated to humiliate. It's one thing to set the record straight, it's another thing entirely to do it in a way that makes someone look like a complete fool for believing in something that, from the outside, seemed entirely reasonable to believe in. As we watch this drama unfold, we are all left wondering what Pearl Watts would do next. Will she continue trying to force a narrative that Maurice has now publicly demolished? Will she gracefully accept this devastating reality and find a way to move forward with her dignity intact? Or will we witness the painful spectacle of someone who refuses to accept that their fantasy has ended, continuing to chase something that was never really there in the first place? The next chapter of this story will reveal whether Pearl Watts has the strength to write herself a new narrative or if she remained trapped in the ashes of the old one. So there you have it, beautiful people, a story of delusion, denial, and devastating reality checks that serves as a masterclass in what happens when we create relationships in our minds that don't exist in reality. Pearl Watts learned the hard way that assuming makes an ass out of you and me, but mostly just you when you're doing it publicly and the other person has access to a microphone. What do you think? Was Maurice justified in his brutal honesty, or should he have handled this disaster with more kindness? Do you think Pearl Watts will bounce back from this public humiliation, or are we about to witness the slow-motion train wreck of someone who refuses to accept reality? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit that like button if this tea was too hot to handle, and don't forget to subscribe because honey, if you think this drama is over, you clearly haven't been paying attention to how these stories usually end. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next in this absolutely unhinged saga.